Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the KnifeCenter. And if you're carrying the right knife, you might just be able to save a life. And with that in mind, we're taking a look at the best rescue folders that you can get your hands on today, or at least a range of different options to choose from. Let's check them out. Now, when we talk about rescue knives, typically we're thinking about first responders in general, but there's far more people that could benefit from actually carrying one, or at least having one of these knives on hand. But to that end, the specific uses these knives are geared to are typically towards pulling people out of wrecks, something that can cut seat belts, break through glass, that sort of thing. The first thing that most rescue knives are going to have is a serrated blade and an option to be able to remove clothing, like cut off clothing or cut through a seat belt without puncturing the individual. And I've got a classic model right here. This is the Spyderco Rescue 3. These are built very well and they come in just under the $100 mark right now. And apart from a different blade, this actually shares a lot of its key features with a bunch of other great Spyderco models. But as to that blade itself, we've got VG10, although there are H1 rust-proof steel options out there, and we have a full serrated edge. That's definitely going to help with the fibrous materials like a seat belt, or if you're having to get under some clothing to cut it off an injured individual, it's going to work very well for that application. And because this is a sheep's foot profile, there's no point to dig into the skin of the person you're trying to save. But apart from that, especially if you can take advantage of a serrated blade in your EDC, it's just a good utility shape overall. And with a lot of these knives here, there are going to be some circumstances where it could be your primary belt knife with some of those extra rescue features baked in. As for the handle, we've got Spyderco's bidirectional FRN, which gives you traction when things are wet or grimy, slimy, anything like that. Because we've got these raised peaks coming out from the center, gives you retention both forward and backward, and it makes a pretty lightweight platform for the knife to rest in too. This knife is also nice and ambidextrous too. This is going to work well whether you're a right-hander or a left-hander, or if you just need to carry the rescue knife on your offhand side, if you're, for instance, a police officer or carry any other kind of gear on your belt where you might not be able to have it in the typical right hand orientation. But you've got a 4-position pocket clip, so you can carry it tip up or tip down no matter where you need to. The ambidextrous lockback is going to work well on either side, and we've got that David Boy dent, which is going to help prevent some accidental closure if you happen to be gripping the knife at just the right angle a little too hard. Kind of mitigates that somewhat. And of course you've got that Spyderco opening hole, makes it real easy to open with your thumb. Now, despite being pretty lightweight, this is less than 4 ounces. Not a featherweight, but it is still very manageable. But despite that, it feels extremely solid, especially on the pull cut. It's got a nice shape for the draw, and you can really pull on it, or I feel like you could really pull on it and get some good leverage going. It also works well in the reverse grip when you're pulling up, especially because if you got that finger choil there, makes a good place for my thumb to rest as you're doing that type of motion. Now, the Rescue 3 is basically just a solid blade on a solid platform, but some rescue knives actually incorporate a few extra tools. And with that, we're going to take a look at a Gerber. This is the CLS folder designed by Rick Hinderer. CLS here stands for Combat Lifesaver, and this is pretty affordably priced in the realm of rescue knives, coming in just over $65 right now. As you can see, the blade shape here skews a little bit more towards the tactical, or a lot more towards the tactical, actually. You've still got a combo edge, so you've got partial serrations here at the back, but you've got a more general purpose tip and plain edge belly there for a little better slicing and just other day-to-day work where you might not want that serrated edge. Now, of course, this is not quite as safe when you're trying to rescue someone to use just this blade. So to that end, we've got another feature, which is right here on the back, you can see, we've got a fold-out seatbelt cutter right there. This really offers kind of a best of both worlds scenario. You get to have just a very usable everyday carry type of blade shape, but you've still got that rescue potential with that seatbelt cutter right there, which of course you can use on clothing as well. And the other feature you'll see, while I fold this back in, right there on the back, we've got an integrated glass breaker right there at the back. So if you need to smash through a window to get to someone, you'll be able to do that with that right there. Got one more feature on this knife too that some rescue knives like to incorporate, and that's an oxygen tank wrench built right into the handle right here. So this technically is a multi-tool. You've got all kinds of things going on, but it's still just a solid everyday carry knife, even if you never actually have to use any of the rest of that stuff. That blade is 3.5 inches long. We've got 440A stainless steel. Not a champ in terms of edge retention, but it is going to be very easy to maintain. The synthetic handle provides a good amount of grip. You can see we've got some dimpling here. And the lock, you can see right here, it's essentially looks like a reverse mounted or a left hand mounted liner lock, but it's actually actuated with this little slider button here, which means you can just use your thumb, pull that back, and close the blade. And one of the things I like about that from a safety perspective is your fingers never cross the path of the blade, but especially in situations where, adrenaline's gonna be high and you're really needing to pull someone out, not having to think about that one extra step is just extra appreciated. Now, if you like all those extra tools, but you want something a little more premium, maybe something made in America, we've got the Benchmade Triage series of knives. Now, there are a few different blade shapes available. These start at about 180. This particular one is one of the rescue variants, but there are triage tactical variants or tactical triages out there that have a more general purpose drop point blade with a very acute tip. But as you can see, this is the Triage Rescue version because it has a flat tip there. It's not sharpened. You probably could if you wanted to, but especially if this was a duty carry for you, where this was a dedicated rescue knife, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But you've got the plain edge out here near the front, as well as your combo edge serrations there at the back. And you can see on the back side, we've got a pretty aggressive swedge just on that back side. So that's going to help a little bit to remove some mass there at the back and remove a little bit of drag. The handles are orange G10, but you've got black options as well. As you can see, we've got that fold-out seatbelt cutter right there and the integrated glass breaker at the pommel. Now, the pocket clip here is reversible. You can carry it right side or left side in a tip-up configuration, whereas that Gerber is a right side tip-down only. At the heart of this knife is another very safe locking mechanism and a very ambidextrous system as well, and that's Benchmade's Axis Lock, which is kind of the progenitor of the crossbar lock genre. You can see we've got a bar of steel that goes through both sides of the handle, which means you can access it with either hand just as easily. And what's nice about this, it's another locking system that keeps your fingers out of the path of the blade. And also, it's fun. You can kind of flick it open and close too for a little more rapid deployment, or just use the thumb studs. Now, all these extra tools are important, but there's some other competitors out there, rather than incorporating things that fold out, they build it into a bit more of a kind of rugged feeling frame. And the first one I want to show in that vein is the csar-t Responder, which is a collaboration between Buck Knives and Tops Knives. And with that Tops heritage definitely comes a very overbuilt design. This is a very strong folder, and it's pretty decently priced too for an American-made knife with some pretty good materials. We're at about $130 right now. You get a 154 cm blade, so it's a bit of an upgrade over Buck's normal 420 HC. About 3.5 inches in length. In fact, all of these kind of sit right around that length that we've looked at so far. Now, the blade on this one actually doesn't feature serrations. That is certainly an option. And it's technically a Tonto profile, but you've got a pretty aggressive drop here at the tip. So kind of like a hunting knife, if you needed to get under some clothing to remove it, you can kind of use the shoulders or the back of that hump to lift the point up. It's going to be a little bit safer for the person you're trying to help. But the other advantage that you get from this Tonto construction and a decently thick blade stock, it's not like a sharpened pry bar, but it's definitely very sturdy, is you've got a very strong tip. You can definitely drive this home and get into some places if you really need to in a pinch. The handles are G10, and we've got dual full liners and then an additional liner for the lock itself. So they didn't want to sacrifice any rigidity on the locking side by having the liner lock actually move on that piece. Also got some really deep grooves here to give you a really good amount of grip, especially helpful if you're happen to be wearing heavier work gloves or tactical gloves for sure. Although the lock is right-hand biased, you can use this on the left or right, or carry it on the left or the right side with the reversible pocket clip. And here at the back, that's where they incorporate the extra tools on this particular design. We've got a single piece here at the back that incorporates both that strap cutter as well as an apex point here to act as a glass breaker. There's even actually one extra little tool here too. It's not an O2 wrench, but you can see we have a standard screwdriver bit driver right here at the back. They even sell some kits that you can get some bits with. Of course, any standard size will work. This definitely is a heavier knife, and I'm not a huge fan of this pocket clip. It is a little bit narrow, but they actually supply this with a belt pouch to carry it with you, and that's going to make it very easy to carry anywhere you need it to. Now, another overbuilt rescue knife that kind of follows a similar playbook, but it is a little bit different, comes from Ontario. This is the XM1S Extreme Military Folding Knife, and it comes in right now at about $140. This is an Italian-made knife, and we've got N690 steel, And as you can see, we definitely go a little bit thicker on this particular one. So you've got a really strong amount of blade stock on this edge itself. A little bit shorter, about 3 3/8, but we've got a fully serrated edge here. There's also a partially serrated combo edge version available if that's what you prefer. Similarly, we've got a liner lock, but we've got synthetic handles rather than G10. And we've got the strap cutter here at the back. And as you can see, it's actually created with 2 separate blades. So technically these are removable and sharpenable, much more easy than your typical gut hook style of seatbelt cutter. Now it may look like this would get in the way, but actually when you hold it, even though the edge of my palm here does rest on it, you don't really feel it as a hot spot. It actually is incorporated really well. Pocket clip is 2-position. It is a tip down only carry knife, however, but when I close it, you can see right here on the leading edge of the knife is where we see the glass breaker on this design. Now these 2 knives definitely represent one way to incorporate the strap cutter or the seatbelt cutter element, but there's actually some more, slightly more refined options out there in terms of the actual solution. The first I'm going to show you is, I'm going to show it to you closed first, is the new SOG Trident AT. These come in about $95 right now, and what you can see, we've actually got a cutout in the handle itself where you actually see the edge of the blade. So you're not using a separate piece or a separate blade to act as your seatbelt cutter. You're actually using your standard edge, which is going to make it easier to maintain over time. It's going to be, you're going to be able to sharpen that edge as normal, so it doesn't add any extra skill set to be able to keep it in tip-top shape for that strap cutting needs. Similar to the Ontario, we also see the glass breaker here at the top. And similar to that Benchmade from before, this is a completely ambidextrous design. It uses SOG's version of the crossbar lock, and it's an assisted opening version of that too. So if I push the blade out, that spring is going to take over and launch it out very easily. Now, I'm not always the biggest fan of an assisted opening knife in general. I tend to prefer a well-executed and well-tuned manual folder. I gotta say, in a high-octane, high-adrenaline scenario, that could definitely be appreciated. Especially if you're wearing heavier gloves and things are moving really fast. With the spring-assisted action here, you don't have to worry about the blade opening when you really need it to. Since we've got our strap cutter built into the handle, essentially, we don't have to deal so much with like a drop point or other sheep's foot styles of blades. Instead, we've got a nice upswept clip point here, although there is also a Tonto profile available. And this particular one is plain edge, but you can also get it with partial serrations. The steel is D2, so you've got a really good material for cutting things like strapping and webbing, any kind of fibrous stuff. Because D2 tends to have very large carbides, I know this is getting into the weeds a little bit, it's real easy to put a nice toothy edge on a D2 steel blade, and that type of edge is going to work very well on those types of scenarios that a rescue knife is going to be put to use. As I said earlier, it is ambidextrous. You've got that crossbar lock here. Hold that back. Now you can't flip it closed because of the spring assist, but it's very easy to close, even one-handed. Let's see. Just use your index finger, rotate it around, no problem. Right here on the spine, we've got a safety that will lock it into the closed position. That way it's not going to accidentally fire until you actually put it onto the fire position. Only works when it's closed though. It's not going to provide an extra lock on the blade when it's open. Also, deep carry pocket clip works on either side of the handle, so that completes the nice ambidextrous package with the SOG Trident AT. Now, another elegant solution for adding the strap cutter is the CRKT M16. This is the 14 ZLEK version. It's a Rescue M16, famous design by Kit Carson. And as you can see, we've actually got here on the flipper tab itself is where we see that strap cutter. I'll go ahead and close the knife here so you can see how you would use it. With the blade in the closed position, you don't have to worry about fighting the actual edge of your knife. You've got that strap cutter that can be used in a pull sort of fashion quite easily. And that flipper is tuned really nicely for the actual action too. Flips that blade open very easily indeed. The safety when it's open is also quite good. That flipper tab provides a very aggressive finger guard, so you're not likely to slip forward. And we've also got CRKT's auto lock system, which automatically engages a secondary lock behind the existing liner lock. You do get some extra safety there. It does make it a little bit more time-consuming to close. Sometimes it's a little easier to actually do a two-handed close with this particular knife. This one's also a decently affordable knife. The price is really good, especially for first responders out there that have to buy your own gear. This might be the one you want to look at. because the price is under 63, or it's about 64 right now, I should say. You get AUS 8 steel, so a pretty good basic steel, nice and stainless. You've got your partial edge, you've got that Tonto profile that's going to help you pierce if you need to. And you do have a little bit of a hump where you could lift up with the tip, but you've got the strap cutter feature in the flipper tab if you want to use that instead. And we've got the glass breaker there at the back. Simple synthetic handles, but we've got some nice holes drilled in here, or molded in, I should say. And they're not really for removing weight, but they do provide you a little bit of extra grip. Now, if you want to go a little more specialized with the actual blade shape, the Hawkbill, especially with a blunted tip like this right here, is actually really well suited towards the type of fabric cutting that you'd need to be doing in a rescue scenario. This is the Emerson SARK, coming in just over 200 right now. For that, you've got a 3.5-inch blade using 154 cm steel, and you can get it with a plain edge, but you can also get it with the partial serrations here, and the recurve is not super aggressive on this Hawkbill. Even so, the reason the Hawkbill is going to be very good, especially for cutting something like a seat belt, with the blunted tip, you can get in there without worrying about hurting the person you're trying to help, and that recurve of the blade will actually do its part to kind of hold what you're cutting onto the blade itself. It's much less likely as you're pulling on the backstroke for the strap or the clothing to just slip off the edge of the blade. The other feature you see here, like you see on pretty much every Emerson out there, are plenty of different options for opening the blade itself. You can see we've got a spine-mounted disc here, which is going to let you open it with your thumb with either hand quite easily. And we've also got Emerson's wave opening feature, which is essentially, you can think of it as a pocket deployer. That little hook, as you're drawing the knife, if you angle it just right, that's going to catch the hem of your pants, and as you actually pull it from your pocket, it's going to rotate the blade open for you so you don't have to pause and do that. You're ready for action just as soon as you draw the knife. That blade is secured by a liner lock underneath G10 handle slabs, and in typical Emerson fashion, you've got a very aggressive texture on here, so you stand very little chance of actually losing your grip on the knife. We've also got a single position pocket clip. This is right side tip up carry, and that's really it in terms of this knife. They don't have any of those extra features, but it's just a really solidly executed Hawkbill rescue blade. Now, speaking of Hawkbills, we actually see a few rescue models out there incorporated into the Karambit design, which of course is a Hawkbill bladed design from the very get-go. And this is the Fox 599 RS Rescue Karambit. Price on these are just under 200. These are made in Italy. And the blade is about 2.5 or about 2.4 inches thereabouts of N690 stainless steel, so pretty good edge retention. And as you can see, we've got that same blunted tip to avoid extra piercing, and a slightly more, or actually a little bit more than slightly more aggressive Hawkbill shape. So you've got more recurve here than on that Emerson, so it's, seatbelt or whatever is going to have a really hard time slipping off of this blade. Now there's no strap cutter on this knife because the blade is already highly specialized for that sort of task. We've got G10 handles with a liner lock, and as you can see, we've got that glass breaker here at the leading edge of the handle. Now this is a flipper opening design, as you can see from the little tab here, but also we don't have an Emerson wave, but we do have a small Phillips head screwdriver kind of milled into the top or integrated into the top spine of this blade, and that can actually work as a pocket deployer if you angle it just right. But you've still got that flipper as an option. You've also got that thumb cutout if you want to open it a little bit more deliberately. For an added degree of safety, we've got another secondary slider or a secondary knob here on the spine. It's located in the same spot as CRKT's auto locks, but it doesn't engage automatically like that design. You do have to manually push it up to lock the blade, or to extra securely lock the blade. Now that does only work in the open position, however. You're not going to be able to lock the blade closed. As far as carry goes, this is carryable on either the right or the left side with the reversible pocket clip. Being a liner lock though, it's definitely a right-hand biased lock, but you can also clip it onto your gear if you prefer that type of carry method, because as most Karambits do, we've got a finger ring here at the back, but we've got a small carabiner gate on it as well in case you want to, like I said, clip it to something rather than clip it into your pocket. Now these two have definitely kind of strayed a little bit away from the idea of having a rescue knife that would be more useful day to day. So we're going to get back to that a little bit, but also shifting gears at the same time. There's a few dedicated rescue multi-tools out there that are definitely worth a look. First one here is the Leatherman Skeletron RX. RX, of course, means this is the rescue version. Price on these comes in at about 80 bucks. These are made in the USA. And as you can see, we've got this red coloration on here. It's actually a Cerakote coating, so it's going to be very durable. But that bright red color is going to make it instantly recognizable and differentiatable, if that's a word, from your standard Skeletool models if you happen to have some of each. That way you can know, at a glance you're grabbing your Rescue version. The first tweak we see that makes this a Rescue version versus the standard is we've got a sheep's foot style blade with about 3/4 of the blade taken up with a serrated edge. We've got a tiny bit of plain edge out here near the tip. But if you've seen the regular Skeletool, the blade is about the same size, but you definitely have a more acute or a more usable tip for day-to-day tasks on the standard versions, whereas this sheep's foot is going to be easier to use without piercing what you don't want to pierce. And also we've got an upgrade to 154 cm blade steel here too over their standard 420 HC. So you've got better edge retention overall, and that right there might make it worth it to make this your EDC multi-tool rather than that base version. Especially if you're like me and you carry a primary knife in addition to this, the loss of that extra tip wouldn't bother me particularly. Now you do have a pocket clip for carry here. You can also get this with a belt sheath, and you can also use the carabiner gate here at the back to clip it to your gear. That works as a bottle opener too. Now opening up the tool, it's still based on their standard pliers that the regular Skeletool comes with. Now the other Rescue consideration we see actually comes into place with Leatherman's interchangeable bit holder here at the back, which can be used to use all different kinds of screwdriver bits. They are proprietary, they're a little bit flatter, but the one that comes with the Skeletool RX actually has a glass breaker built in to one of those interchangeable bits. So you can use that to break through the glass, and then you still have the usability of being able to swap it out and use different screwdriver bits as you need. It even comes with an extra one here built right into the handle. Finally, we've got a Rescue Swiss Army knife. This is the Victorinox Rescue tool. Price on these is a little bit over 85, and as you can see, it's based around their one-hand trekker format, for lack of a better term. It's the the fullest size multi-tool Swiss Army knife you can get. And first Rescue consideration, you can see right off the bat, we've got a glass breaker incorporated here at the top edge of the handle. The blade is typical of their one-hand opening devices in that we've got a drop point profile with serrations out near the tip rather than back towards the the heel of the blade, which even this right here is going to be a very useful Rescue blade shape because the tips of their drop points don't tend to be exceptionally sharp. They're kind of blunted off just a little bit, just a hint. Plus you've got that action of the drop point that the drop point allows, and the serrations there right at the front. It's going to make it very effective as is for the seatbelt cutting needs. But they've also got a dedicated seatbelt cutter on this particular knife as well. It's a recurve design, as you can see, with full serrations, and there's even a little bit of a nub here at the top to help even further that recurve's ability to hold something into the cut. Now that seatbelt cutter does not lock open. The main blade does, however, so I'll push that out of the way. And we also get one more device on this knife that's particularly suited to Rescue needs, and that's this right here, which they call a disc saw. This is not a wood saw. You can see the teeth aren't offset, but this is made to actually saw through shatterproof glass. So any of necessarily the safety glass or any of that other stuff, you don't have to worry about trying to use your blade itself. If you're not able to shatter through quite well, you can use this to essentially rip a line through it and remove it and get to the person you need to get to. Beyond that, we've just got a few standard Swiss Army knife tools. You got your toothpick and tweezer, Phillips screwdriver, and awl, and of course, no good multi-tool would be complete without its bottle opener. And of course, this one also incorporates that flathead screwdriver. And it locks open too, which is another nice touch. So if you can use this as a little bit of a light prying tool without worrying about the tool closing and snapping closed on your finger. All right, that's all I've got to show you right now. And hopefully this kind of got you thinking of how you can use your knives to help someone else. And maybe you saw something here that would be a great addition to your EDC. Love to know what your favorites were. Let me know down in the comments, and let me know what you do to prepare for some of those eventualities like these. If you want to get your hands on any of these knives, you can click the link in the description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program, because if you're going to buy one of these knives for either you or the first responder in your life, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. I hope you're all staying safe, sane, and sanitary out there. See you next time.